Start with the prologue from my new poetry book, Reboot, More So Disconnected, which actually came out a few days ago from Reboot Press. And it's titled Prologue, a letter to someone far away. Dear Brian Geisen, I believe that every psychonaut reaches a point where it's almost too far to turn back and they're forced to make a choice as to whether they want to go back at all. But me, I want to dig deeper, beyond words, beyond sound, beyond meaning, beyond factory walls, beyond this prison of flesh. Because Brian Geisen, you said we are here to go to space. And we are. But outer space is inner space. They're one and the same. And is it possible to go so far inward as to leave this body behind? After all, we're ghost transmissions and fragments of dreams. We are specters moving aimlessly through time. Because ghosts aren't ghosts at all. They're nothing more than other points of time bleeding through cracks in space. Because time is like a videotape that's been taped on over and over again until images bleed through with EVP shards of white noise echoing your inner voice. Ghost transmissions from the subconscious fire off in your brain like heat lightning in a humid summer night. Brian Geisen, it's possible to go so far inward that you end up in outer space and data binge your way into the void. Is it possible to be awake in your dreams and sleep your way through the monotony of days because I languish in the cool, smoky consciousness of dreams? And are all the people in your dreams really you? I've been intentionally giving myself split personalities since I was a child, and I'm not so sure any of you exist. And does it matter because ultimately we're all alone in inner space? Do I exist? If you wake up, will I disappear in a cloud of smoke, dissipating and reaching into the sky like crooked fingers reaching desperately for heaven? And Brian Geisen, do you exist in space-time or in the cool auspices of dreams? Thank you. That was, that was from my new book from Reboot Press called Reboot, More So Disconnected. Reboot Press is putting out some of the best experimental writing today, so definitely check them out. So I'm going to shift gears, and this next piece is from a chapbook of mine I published a few years ago called Subliminal Syntax, and this is called A Rope of Faith. Effigy of man burns by the sea like people inside their private inner suburbia holding the collar to lead in the excess of personal euphoria. America's ominous moon highlights cracked sidewalks, shortcuts through alleys of bleak stories, scrap tattered boats, dark trash, cardboard, open seacoast with waves, receding into Sartre's vertigo of consciousness with a collection of books that knew all of the stories. Old maps at erotic churning steel, bright broken glass in the hands of days amidst the sound of restless crowds, peeling paint, windows of dreams, nothing time. The lonely saxophone moans, and inch by inch you crawl to the sounds of bones clanking the boneyard percussion of death. Unspeakable creatures crawl in unknown spaces, illuminating the wilderness of time until you came up a smokescreen. Spectral man with smoke wisping up out of dreams with a careful nod saying, I warned you. Distant psychic vampires thrust themselves into notorious jungles of self-loathing, and I sat there paralyzed, hungry, bloodstained. They squirmed and fanned out on the far shore, but you didn't feel the murmuring self, the last resignation, walking roads, sidewalks, fences. Poverty returns to the vacuum of time. Bouncing lights, nervous tension melting down, screaming hollow music. Bullets, and the music dies in a cloud of smoke. He steps towards the red door and asked about deconstruction as one was suffering, and around your bleak brick mountains of poetry breeze everyone high while he snapped youth with his pose. From a desert place, pacing, posturing, looking in thought for subliminal stories. Machines moan, nothing detachments. He felt restless, claustrophobic, screaming heartache, but we must taste stillness worse. For who has answered death's scarred face with the blood opera? The doors exploded inward, led by false emotions, and a wall of white noise rushed in, sacrificing the silence. Neon window, chrome front locked, and the lane misery left to left, vague responses. Night shortly faded, shaken, unsure. I am the light of respective commands. But we exist in a puff of smoke, looking out the window at the gray ones sleepwalking through halls of dreams. We lay shattered in front of the store, busted glass, sirens piercing the air. A secret place, terrible, unpleasant, walking along the roads, poverty returned to the vacuum of time. We make circles until silence falls. And this is the day we've waited for, but now we do not belong. And this is our common bond. Thank you. This next piece is also from the chapbook Subliminal Syntax. It's called Negotiating Metaphors. His smile is nothing at all. This place is purgatory. The beast told him. Stranded ambivalence, noise, a mission of comfortable rides. The stars will fall from the sky while I sit in neglected devastation. Spread holy, languid nonsense, fled the body of human condition. A pulse, contraction of the hungry, and suddenly want to consider more than a profit of wasted time. I've lost thousands of breaths against the dark sanctity of Zen brothers standing in silence. Stimulation of the world exists in darkness of rapid pulses hanging over their heads and bare bones. I want to be a terrible deity, shifted and limited by dreams, now obsolete, blind or scraping, cracks of real twist laughter. Give flesh, the fire spread. Waving, hissing machines, metal singing echoed my voice. Soak in with swollen ears, a real face to solemn sky, you were informed that the great and terrible capitalism was withdrawn from the final ghetto. The mind is wandering and roundless, without wisdom drowning over the sounds of the streets and fools laboring in vain talk. Frozen factories scattered between sunset and humping machines hanging there on American television screens. Buddhas camouflaged drop dead here in the last factory on earth oozing interdimensionally as apathetic gelatin. Narrow curves and penetration of self, lonely ephedrine makes fantastic dreams, the years of the moon and the work of the day. Melancholy lifetime of Mondays in the hearts of men. Is he playing back the sound of growling machines? Stubby fingers push tiny wars and the world is out of its mind. Heaven and hell is incidental, walking in the dreamy, sad, happy desert fractal summit of dreams. The city speaks to the total isolation of the shadow, with dreams just as empty. While people put their tired heads to pillows, our feet stomp to pervert the silence, and we sit still on the strength of a dream. A gap is an endless dream, a human sound verbalizer's engine and holiness of heaven and secret places. Vultures circle dead of numbers that do not want to talk. Fantasia, metal, and war machines will fall from heaven. Reset revolutions, enlighten public officials to respond to myths, movement of gravity, the shapes of strange UFO and otherwise. Landscapes replaced by robotic shadows and sounds in the dark. The voices whisper in the shadow of the machine, and drunk, sad American poets watch the prison buildings and steel perimeters. A stable disease leads to factories stop following monsters' footsteps, only silence. I'm going to the moon, the stars. Forgetting the moon does not extinguish the sun, and in this regard, we shall go out and create much more power, felt trapped in dream, prayer, pitter, patter, spitting, snuff, smoke, and extension, simple, poetic, made between eternity. The sun is above the horizon, waiting for the explosion, the voice of angels, a certain proportion of thinking, and expressive reproach. All right, that was a little bit heavy, so I'm going to lighten the mood now. And I'm going to shift gears and go way back to some pieces I wrote a long time ago. We're talking like MySpace old.
Oh, MySpace?
Yeah, if you remember that.
Nobody else
But back then I was writing a lot more relatively straightforward, accessible poetry, and stylistically anything, or way different than anything I've read tonight. But it seems appropriate because they were both written in and about this city. And I thought I'd share them. So the first one is called The Corner of Catas Menendez. From my hotel balcony, I watched the sun slowly peek up over a soft pink morning under the stale haze of a head-splitting hangover. Again. The fisherman already wading across crystalline waters that softly crashed tiny depths across the bay, and in the distance, car after car head across sea-battered bridges to crowded beaches, and somewhere someone laughs. On the sidewalk below, tourists already beat down sidewalks in search of neon storefronts to drop more cash than I see in a week. Sounds of people, birds, boats, and passing cars blend together and form a new kind of silence. A new day arrives, hustling, bustling, and all I wonder is, did they even notice the sunrise? Got one more St. Augustine poem. Digging the view of Matanza Bay from my motel window and the sounds of hooves galloping down ancient cobblestone lanes. The haunting coastal breeze creeps in, echoing through coquina structures. Tourists beat sidewalks and laughter flows out of quaint pubs. And through it all, the fisherman walks quietly in the fading evening light. He's dressed head to toe in his yellow rain suit and scruffy beard. and with a tired pace he turns up the pier and disappears into a sea of hitched boats. He might as well have been a ghost. And no one would know, least of all him, that he just became a poem. Alright, so I'm going to shift back to the present. I think I may have mentioned already, I got a new book out from Reboot Press, rebootpress.com. And I'm going to read a few more verses out of that. I am transparent, infinite, sometimes inferior, sometimes large and often broken, the eyes filled with tiny universes yawning. Between infinity and now the sound is the voice of death. I'm a clock, a skull, a caricature in darkness. The repetitive, engineering radio wrinkles squeezing the self mournfully and in waves, dismal fingers. I radio static. I am of cogs and gears. I am of broken dreams, and I'll remember, if language willing, little ghosts and memories. This is went really quick. I got one more to read for you guys. Before I do, I want to thank everybody for letting us have this here tonight, organizing it, and having me. Thanks to all you guys for listening. Hope you've dug at least a little bit of it. So with that said, I started out the night with the prologue for my new book. So it's only fitting I end it with the epilogue, and it's called I Am Han Shan If Cold Mountain Was a Factory. In the distance, I stare out, not talented or smart enough to escape this place, the same alienated little boy that wrote little songs and epitaphs beyond the factory gates and into the San Francisco of the imagination, and always back into that fucked up little brain of that shy, awkward kid in that sea of mediocrity. I laugh despite of it, recalls of it, mumbling, stammering, never mind me, old man Mason. That big deal, if only the world wasn't phony, and that makes me not me. I'd rather burn, man, and I ain't got nothing. Guys ride around on forklifts high, I blush at the thought of ambition. Let me rather cavort around the neighborhood 1,000 suns than drown slowly. Night shift is a nothing but a series of existential crises. Thoughts dry and wither anticlimactically, dying here in this bizarre purgatory. I probably shouldn't have listened, nothing to do, but a lot of too shy, too stupid to exist, radio static, hydraulic, humping of machinery, toxic coffee with my old friend John Coltrane, goofy old Zen weirdo like Han Shan and Rambo. Sometimes I move slowly, like an angel in tar, salt and pepper beard and wild hair, and outside my lab window there is a world of hydraulics, gears, pipes, valves, resin, grimes, spiderwebs, the stink of chemicals and forklift exhaust. An entire stupid world in black and white because color would be too real and heartbreaking. We used to write little stories and preferred to live in the imagination. They lived little lives as I, being the introvert, pulsed at various technological this and that and eventually poems. And if I could go back, I would tell them put down the notebooks and glimmer and fade into the velvet blackness of night. But in the end I crashed, and there's no escape, border to border, east to west. Wayne Mason, he was young and thin back then. He was mad with poetry and ideas. I avert my eyes in guilt. Of what singularity was man himself born from? When did the machine, it doesn't matter, no angel singing, just labored breath in the heavens barking at me while I slip away like a machine in the distance beyond the factory. They are laughing sick laughs. They are laughing and becoming slower and slower and less human, and I can't remember exactly when. Wade Mason stare out the abysmal factory to the machines, night shift. It comes quietly with much dreaming of Tangier rooftops with Brian Geisen. We have dreams. He had dreams. Machine whirring to a stop, remember? Old timer with belly full of anarchy, all dying in this place. He'd stay up all night, turns his head up to the gates in the velvet blackness of north and south. I will be just another machine on an assembly line, and he can hear his mind. It was elsewhere. Miles enough for lucky enough to escape him. Co-workers laugh in the distance. We stood there in that stupid body, and I was a romantic dreamer. Thank you guys.